We are basically, or under the Teal Fellowship, my co-founder Mari and I are working on creating a fashion tech innovation lab where we can research different projects associated with the world of wearables, whether that be wearable technology or different kind of fibers that we're wearing, different manufacturing systems, anything that can help drive the wearables industry forward. So I thought it would be good to start off with just exploring what we mean by innovation, and also exploring what we mean by fashion tech, because it can vary, and I think it's become an umbrella term that means multifunctional watches, when it can really be a lot more. Okay, so this is us created inside the lab. So we think that the real magical intersection is really multidisciplinary. So looking at that sweet spot between design, math and science, and of course technology. And it's a little dull, but over here is innovation. And that's where the magic really comes. When we only have people thinking in one way, it's very easy for things to stay the exact same way. And so what does it actually mean to innovate? I think especially now we're seeing more and more products out there, especially with crowdfunding sites that allow anyone to make a consumer product. We find that there are lots of things, but are they really innovative things? And so whenever we're working on projects, we like to focus on a combination of functionality and sustainability. If something doesn't work better, or isn't easier to manufacture, or isn't better for the planet, then I don't know if we really need it. So we try not to make things, we try and make innovative things. And that's part of making those. And so the question really is how can a lot of things materialize? And we probably tend to come out, of course, in quantified products such as biometric wearables or social API wearables, things along those lines. But also looking at improved production systems. Possibly we could take inspiration from animation processes in something like Maya, for example, which relies heavily on polygonal unwrapping and rewrapping systems, and take that into our clothing patterning system, which is more of a jigsaw puzzle-like patterning system. It doesn't always make the most sense for the kind of labor that we're dealing with domestically. As far as textile engineering, looking at smart textiles, fabrics that make us warmer when we're cold and make us colder when we're warm. And I think that by now our clothing should be able to have that kind of functionality, but it's not something that a lot of the industry is focusing on. In addition, there's textiles for production. So the fact that there's a ton of waste left over when a pattern is cut out says that the textiles we're using aren't really made for the purpose that we want them for. Everything we're wearing originated in a flat 2D form, but we're 3D people. So that's initially a conflict of interest that we can think about when it comes to textile engineering. And we're also just very interested in the world of material sciences. Well, what else could we use to make our clothing? How else could we weave it together? What sort of chemical structures could we replicate to make something that's more practical? Okay, and so going off of that, this is a little blip of a bit of research that we were working at. Mari and I really love having learning days, and so we spent one learning day at the Museum of Math. And the Museum of Math was showing a film called Between the Folds, which shows these passionate mathematicians explaining how they love origami because it's all about adding numbers in such precise and yet infinite ways in order to do exactly what they're looking for. So inspired by that, we thought about how we could apply this to clothing and patterns as well. You know, our clothing comes in one static shape, but it would be great if we could fold that into several different shapes and have it have more functionality. So this is our little name for it, platonic solids. We don't know what the real name would be, but we had a little story about it and how things should be more multifunctional. And then we started playing around with different patterns. So you can see how it originated as this simple one here. It was a back and forth process of ideation and then hands-on work, seeing what could fold up into all different shapes and seeing what we could make. And then going from there, we came up with this longer structure, which we were able to fold into a pair of pants. This is just crumpled and compressed in general. And this is a skirt that we can make, which is very simple, but we were able to find a pair of pants, a little tank top that you can make, a little jacket, things along those lines. So although this is 1/5 of the scale, it would be great to think about how we can make that for something that we can all wear and also something that's aesthetically similar to what we're wearing today. we did a little bit of textile experimentation, and I can show you guys some videos from that as well. But before moving into the experimentation, diving into material sciences was also a good idea, and we had met with a professor from Carnegie Mellon. He's an expert of magnetism, and he inspired us to possibly explore the world of non-Newtonian liquids, specifically ferrofluids, when it came to making garments that could fold into different ways and make connections in unexpected ways. So it's really fun to see how this research can take you on adventures that you're not necessarily looking for. From that, we started exploring crystal lattice structures and seeing how we could possibly use that as a basis for some of the magnetic lattices that we were considering. And to be continued, so if I can navigate on my desktop, I have a few things that kind of take us more into the tech world when it comes to exploring some of the law of designs. Let's see. Speaking of tech. This is an animation that we did in Maya, and it's really brief, but it shows fabric draping over a human form, and we could use something like this to test different textile weights, test different pressure points where magnets, for example, might be embedded, and simulate all of this before doing it by hand in order to see what the results would be in a less wasteful way. How her beautiful neck ring slowly drapes onto the body. And this one has a pressure point that's directed right here on her neck, so you can see how everything kind of zooms in towards that side of her body. It makes this really beautiful waveform, and we can use this sort of technology to experiment with all different textiles and functionalities. This is just a quick rendering that Mari created, and when looking at unwrapping garments in different polygonal forms, you can see how Maya and different animation programs show everything in forms of polygons. So this would have a very obvious patterning system, and this was actually an image used for a recent article that we wrote with Fast Company Lab, so I think that should still be up on your website if you're interested in seeing this or some of the other projects that we did while at this workshop on computational design. So last, we always think that it's really important to engage the community with anything that we're working on and see what people actually want. It's very easy to assume. And so we have a bit of funny research for you guys that I can do here. Okay, so we sent out a mailer for Join the Brainstorm. So we got all sorts of crazy answers. This one was one of my favorites. You can see it's a giant paragraph. And embedded in there, it says that they would quite like it if you could get a cat suit that would melt into soap when you're in the shower, so you don't have to do laundry. I don't know exactly how it coincides with laundry, but I guess it would be very handy when you're showering. You never know. There was one up here. This one just said, make me look or feel prettier or skinnier or cooler or taller, any of the above, whatever you can do, in no particular order, so they don't play favorites with these things. This one is great. They'd like their clothing to have a magnet, specifically a guide magnet, but seriously. And then after that it says hidden pockets. I'm becoming more and more purse free. Can't carry your magnets in your pockets, so you gotta have them on their clothing. But basically, some of the questions that we asked were, well, what sort of consumer are you, first of all? So I personally joke, I never feel satisfied buying what is given to me on the shelves. I have to find something else, or something interesting, or something used, or something crazy. And so we tried to see people were consumers who just buy things that are already made and accepted, if they like to make their own things, if they really hunt around for the perfect one. We also found out if people have a personal uniform, if they wear the same sorts of things every day, possibly the exact same thing every day, as some people I know, as crazy as it may be. And quite a few people tend to keep to the same aesthetic from day to day. So we really do identify with what we're wearing. What is your biggest barrier to making your own clothing? And with that, we were wondering if there was some sort of textile that you could use to fold your own clothing and make your own shape. Would people want that? Or just because you can cook your own food doesn't mean you do it. So it's important to find out. With that, what is your view on the outfit you're currently wearing? We got a few, I'm wearing bathrobes or pajamas. So people seem very satisfied with those, which is good. The best column here was, if your clothing could do something additional, besides keep you warm and keep you modest, what would it be? And then this one over here was just, imagine it's 2020. What would your personal uniform actually be like if you had one? Somebody answered this question saying that they found it very distressing to sleep without. So apparently it's a big question. Don't think about it too hard. So yeah, basically that's us. You can get in touch with Mari or I through email or any time. We're always adding new information to our website. So yeah, feel free to visit. And as you can see, we like to keep ideations up in different surveys along those lines in case you want to contribute to other research projects and have your answers shown to large crowds of people. And yeah, great. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, so why don't we have some time for questions and answers for either Cabo or Maddy or Mari, if you want to join. Mari, again, is the co-founder of Created. She's here tonight. So we'll just open it up. Sure, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Shireen. I've been working on high-tech footwear for the past 3 years. I'm an engineer, and one of the things I'm always interested in, the question for the larger community is, there's been ample evidence now that wireless waves are causing cancer, are causing, are causing harm to humans and human health. And so I struggle with this in terms of like, how do we move forward, because we have so many opportunities to do great things with technology, and how do we mitigate perhaps the harmful effects, like what kind of discussion is going on around that, and what can we do as designers in terms of controlling for that?
I can take that one. I think that a lot of the problem is that we're not very informed, and things that are popular tend to be a lot of wizardry. So we're not actually looking at the materials that we're building with. A huge conversation that Maddy and I have is actually about the dangers of cotton and like tampons, for example. That's something that's wearable, but it is incredibly toxic. Why aren't we making this out of an organic material? It's actually good for you, that wouldn't give you toxic shock syndrome. So I think what you're referencing is incredibly relevant, but we need to start looking at informing consumers and empowering consumers through informing them and having them, even in the first place, want to be informed, which is the big question mark. And I think that's where designers come in, is you make people actually want to know what's in their products, and how are we going to make that appealing?
I think that as technology advances, just going off of that, people are especially clueless, unfortunately. I went to this one dinner in Vegas, and this guy was making fancy juices for everybody at the dinner. He said he's opening a store where you can put your hand on a GSR machine, and it will tell you all the nutrients that you're deficient in. Galvanic skin response is used as a lie detector test. It tests the conductivity of your skin. So maybe it could tell you if you're off balance, but there's no way to tell you if you're deficient in vitamin K from a GSR test. I mean, especially if you're not using optics or anything along those lines. And so I think as consumers, people should say, wait a minute, that won't work, rather than say, wow, it's magic. And I think that education on every level is so important, especially as we iterate faster and faster with new technology.
And also the potentials of the wearable layer as a means of protection, because it's the closest to your body. So then you can embed things in there that protect your body from the cell phone that you carry in your pocket or something like that.
Yeah, we have that pollution level. I think it was developed in China, which is very apt. You can have cell phone apps that tell you the pollutants in the air, which there was a designer, I can't remember the name, I'm sure you could look it up, that made clothing that actually cleaned the air around you, which is a nice idea.
Okay, more questions? I've got one. So a theme in all of the products that you showed is that people are having fun. And I'm a video game nerd, so I've read in video game context, it's really hard to sort of guess what people are finding fun. How do you make things fun? I know it's a broad question. Do you start with an idea and then test it, or do you just know intuitively what's going to be fun?
I don't know intuitively what's going to be fun. There's always a lot of testing involved. That's what the playtesting thing is all about. And and there's various places in the whole process where you can play test. Even in the beginning, without any technology. Like for the hippie game, I play tested that without any technology. Saw what would happen. But really seriously, like we explored the different structures that would make it sort of optimize the experience so that it wasn't dragging on too long or wasn't too short or something like that. So like there's actually a lot of thought into balancing those systems and creating sort of a meaningful experience in that way. But also a lot of these physical games there's a lot of room for people to bring in emergent behavior, so an emergent play. And so when you think of a traditional controller, the number of things that you can do in a game is limited by the number of buttons are programmed to do whatever action. But when you're playing a game, face to face with another person physically, there's basically infinite number of moves that you can make. And I mean, of course, depending on the rules, maybe there's some constraints, but there's a lot of things. I mean, if you think about like baseball or something like that, you can do so many different kind of moves. I mean, there's stealing a base, maybe you fake it, or you slide it, or I don't know. There's a lot of things that you can do, and they can't all be represented in these digital controllers. So there's a lot of I rely a lot on that kind of sort of spontaneous stuff that happens, and things that I find also unexpected. And those things can actually be incredibly fun.
That's cool.
Of the projects that were presented tonight, on average, how much time do you spend developing some of these projects?
For me, usually like, I guess 6 months to a year is the projects that I showed today. But there are things that I will do in one day. Like in that kind of creative process, it's good to do a little palette cleansing and work on short projects and then mix them with large projects.
How about you guys?
Sure. I mean, we didn't show a completed project. In general, we try and keep them at 4 to 6 months or so. But when it comes to like research or things along those lines, they tend to be a bit shorter because we're not making as many tangible things. I think that keeping things under a year keeps it exciting and fresh. So that's what we're aiming for.
So the technology just becomes irrelevant at a certain point. And one of the things that we've been conscious of, and we have a project that we couldn't show you unfortunately, but right now is when we are showing that around and seeing if anybody's interested in it, setting a time limit to that so that we're not married to the idea and then just wind up being salespeople, moving on and saying, okay, well, that wasn't as receptive as we thought people might be to it, and then on to the next.
Go ahead.
Yeah, have you guys thought about the issue of cyber hackers and how much that would work with technologies?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting, I mean, there's all those people doing like the facial recognition makeup stuff, and I think that